For as long as anyone can remember, China has been the power in Asia. With their population and economic buoyancy, it's been impossible for almost anyone to match them, let alone try. Well, until now. In today's eye-opening video, we share secrets that reveal a change in power that could spell doom for the land of the dragon. Stay until the end, as we've got 4 major factors that could entirely change the course of expected events and the fate of the world's economy. Before we get into that, make sure you've liked this video and also that you subscribe to the channel. In accordance to the UN's projections, meticulously derived from a complex interplay of factors including census data, birth and death rates, India has now achieved a population milestone with a staggering count of 1.4 billion, thus surpassing China for the very first time in history. This marks a historic turning point, a shift in the global demographic landscape. Notably, it's the first instance of China being dethroned from its long-standing position at the summit since 1950, when the UN initially began its meticulous record-keeping of global population data. China's journey to this population decline is steeped in a history of rigorous measures implemented to curb the rampant birth rates of the past. These measures included the institution of the infamous one-child policy during the 1980s, which entailed imposing fines for exceeding the designated number of children, coerced abortions, and sterilizations. While this policy was initially remarkably effective in reining in population growth, it paradoxically sowed the seeds of its own challenges. Today, China grapples with the unintended consequences of the stringent policies. An aging population in rapid decline now looms on the horizon, a phenomenon that could spell severe economic implications for the nation. A central facet for this predicament is the enduring preference for male offspring, which the one-child policy inadvertently exacerbated. This has resulted in a staggering gender imbalance, with men outnumbering women by approximately 32 million. Despite recent efforts in China to incentivize women to have more children, they have had limited success in reviving population growth. On average, women still have only 1.2 children, and as per projections, the Chinese population is anticipated to diminish by nearly 10% over the next 2 decades. The prospects are even more dire, as it's predicted that the Chinese population might dip below 1 billion before the close of the century. The seismic shift in the population dynamics of these 2 nations not only reflects their distinctive demographic trajectories, but also raises profound questions about their social, economic, and political futures. Over in India, the population has been on a wild ride, exploding by more than 1 billion since 1950. Although things are slowing down a bit, India is set to keep growing for the next few decades, reaching a whopping 1.7 billion by 2064. To put it in perspective, they're welcoming around 86,000 new babies every day, while China's only seeing about 49,400. Poonam Mutreja, who heads the Population Foundation of India, thinks people have been getting a bit worried about India being the most crowded place on Earth, but she says we don't have to fear the population bomb anymore. A few years back, they said India would overtake China in 2027, but they've done it 4 years earlier, thanks mainly to all the younger population. Meanwhile, China's hit the brakes on its population growth, and it looks like they're cruising towards stability as long as they stay on course. Despite holding the crown, India is still not sure how many people they've got. The government was supposed to do a big head count in 2021, but thanks to COVID-19 they had to hit pause, and the Prime Minister Narendra Modi hasn't spilled the beans on when they'll start up again. Some say Modi is hiding the numbers for political reasons, but the government claims they're just upgrading their tech for the next census. The experts say the population's grown by nearly 200 million since the last census in 2011, which is more than the whole population of Brazil. The lack of data makes it hard to plan things like policies and welfare programs. In India, the population isn't the same everywhere. Over the next 10 years, about 1/3 of the expected population growth will happen in just 2 northern states, Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. These states are among the poorest and are heavily dependent on farming. Uttar Pradesh alone has a massive population of roughly 235 million, which is even bigger than countries like Nigeria and Brazil. On the flip side, in the southern states of India, which are more economically well off and have higher literacy rates, population growth has already slowed down and in some places started to shrink. In the next decade, states like Kerala and Tamil Nadu in the south are going to face a different challenge: an aging population. By 2025, about 1 in every 5 people in Kerala will be over 60. This population growth gap between India's north and south could have a big impact on politics. After 2026, India plans to redraw electoral lines based on the latest census data, including constituency populations. Some politicians in the southern states worry that their efforts to control population growth through education, family planning, and higher literacy rates might lead to them having less political representation in the national parliament. Right now, the average age in India is just 29, meaning the country will stay pretty young for the next couple of decades. This so-called demographic dividend has been a huge boost to economic growth in countries like China, especially in manufacturing. Even though India has one of the world's fastest growing economies and recently surpassed the UK to become the 5th largest, experts say that the country needs to invest more in education and employment to make the most of this young population over the next few decades. India is still struggling with high youth unemployment, with fewer than 50% of working-age people actually working. The number is even lower for women, with only about 20% of them participating in the formal labour market, and this number is getting smaller as India develops. In April, when India became the world's most populous nation, people started asking a big question: could New Delhi outshine Beijing to become the next global powerhouse? India has nearly double China's birth rate, and it's been outpacing China in economic growth for the last 2 years. Last quarter, India's GDP shot up by 6.1%, while China managed 4.5%. The numbers sure look promising, don't they? This question became even more interesting when Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi met up with US President Joe Biden in Washington. Imagine from a US point of view, if India, the world's largest democracy, could really take on China. That would be a big deal. India and China aren't exactly best buddies. They share over 2,000 miles of border where conflicts break out now and then. The stronger China's competitors in Asia are, the better it is for the United States. But before we get too carried away with the idea of a rising India, there are 4 things we need to think about. First, people have been wrong about India's rise before. Back in the 90s, they were all excited about India's young population and how it would drive economic growth and create an economic miracle. Even smart analysts like Fareed Zakaria got caught up in the excitement in 2006 when the World Economic Forum in Davos called India the world's fastest growing free market democracy and said India's economy would soon surpass China's. Well, India's economy did grow, but those predictions didn't quite pan out. Second, despite India's impressive growth in the last couple of years, becoming one of the world's top 5 economies, its economy is still much smaller than China's. Back in the early 2000s, China's manufacturing, exports, and GDP were about 2 to 3 times bigger than India's. Now, China's economy is around 5 times larger, with a GDP of $17.7 trillion, compared to India's $3.2 trillion. In recent years, India has faced challenges in keeping pace with global advancements in science and technology, which are crucial drivers for economic growth. When we compare India and China, some notable disparities emerge. China boasts nearly twice the number of STEM graduates as India, devoting a significant 2% of its GDP to research and development, while India allocates just 0.7%. It's noteworthy that among the world's top 20 tech companies in terms of revenue, 4 are of Chinese origin, with none originating from India. In the realm of 5G infrastructure, China leads, accounting for over half of the world's production, while India contributes just 1%. Notably, Chinese tech products such as TikTok have achieved global prominence, while India is yet to produce a tech product that enjoys a similar global footprint. China has emerged as a formidable competitor in the United States in the field of artificial intelligence. In fact, China's SenseTime AI model recently outperformed OpenAI's GPT on crucial technical benchmarks, whereas India is notably absent from the competitive landscape. China also holds a substantial 65% share in the world's AI patents, while India holds just 3%. China's AI firms have attracted an impressive $95 billion in private investments from 2013 through 2022, whereas India's tally is only $7 billion. When we examine top-tier AI researchers, they predominantly hail from China, the United States, and Europe, with India trailing behind. When assessing a nation's power, it's not just the sheer number of citizens that matters, but also the quality of its workforce. China's workforce has proven to be more productive than India's. China's remarkable achievement in virtually eradicating abject poverty has been globally celebrated. In stark contrast, India continues to grapple with high levels of poverty and malnutrition. In 1980, a staggering 90% of China's 1 billion citizens had incomes below the World Bank's threshold for abject poverty. Today, that number is nearly non-existent. In contrast, more than 10% of India's population, totaling 1.4 billion, still lives below the World Bank's extreme poverty line of $2.15 a day. India faces significant issues related to undernourishment, with 16.3% of its population suffering from this condition in 2019 and 2021, compared to less than 2.5% in China, according to the latest United Nations State of Food Security and Nutrition in the World Report. India also contends with one of the highest rates of child malnutrition globally. Fortunately, the future is not predetermined by the past. Nevertheless, as a warning signposted in the Pentagon suggests, hope alone is not a sufficient strategy. As we work to support India's aspirations for a brighter future under Prime Minister Modi's leadership, it is essential for Washington to heed the insights of one of Asia's most astute strategists, Lee Kuan Yew, the founding father and longtime leader of Singapore. Lee Kuan Yew held deep respect for the Indian people and sought to collaborate with successive Indian prime ministers, including Jawaharlal Nehru and Indira Gandhi, with the hope that India could become a robust counterbalance to China, thereby safeguarding space for this small city-state to thrive. However, in a series of interviews published in 2014, a year before his passing, Lee reluctantly concluded that this aspiration might remain unfulfilled. He cited India's deeply entrenched caste system, which impedes meritocracy, its sprawling bureaucracy, and the reluctancy of its elite class to address the diverse interests of its numerous ethnic and religious groups as formidable obstacles. Consequently, Lee believed that India might perpetually be the country of the future, without ever realizing that future. When questioned about whether India could emulate China's rapid growth a decade ago, Lee provided a direct response: do not talk about India and China in the same breath. Since Lee made this assessment, India has embarked on an ambitious journey of infrastructure and development under new leadership, showcasing its remarkable capacity for substantial economic growth. Yet, while we remain hopeful for a different outcome, it's doubtful that Lee would place his bet on it. Lately, India's leader, Narendra Modi, has been making headlines in economic circles, often at the expense of China. The reason? Projections suggest that India's growth is set to surpass China's by a considerable margin in 2023. But is it really so? All of a sudden, India's approximately 6% growth rate doesn't seem as commanding, with China rapidly accelerating to the 4.5% output range. In fact, China's annualized growth rate for the year has been its fastest, indicating that its 5% growth rate target is attainable, and it hints at China's outperformance in global exports. This intriguing narrative of China versus India is, however, great news for the economy. It implies that together, Asia's top 2 and 3 economies will stabilize global demand, especially when concerns about an economic downturn intensify. In the eyes of the International Monetary Fund, this positions China and India as the indispensable engines of global growth, making them primary contributors to global demand. From a soft power perspective, it's exactly what Prime Minister Modi and Chinese leader Xi Jinping need. As US lawmakers continue to unsettle world markets, investors can find solace in the stability of the gross domestic product in both China and India, at least for now. Nevertheless, both nations face formidable challenges, including demographic ones. Just this week, it was reported that Modi's population has exceeded Xi's, with the United Nations indicating that India's population has reached 1.4286 billion, slightly surpassing China's 1.4257 billion. In China's case, there's the pressing concern that Xi's population is aging faster than it's becoming wealthier. This is not an ideal situation for Xi, especially as Chinese youth unemployment nears 20%, rising from 18.1% in February to 19.6% in March, just as he commences his third term as the Communist Party leader. For India, the challenge lies in creating enough jobs to transform their demographic dividend into a socio-economic reality. While it's promising that the company Apple is increasing its production in India, reducing its reliance on China, India needs to keep pace by improving its infrastructure, streamlining regulatory processes, and enhancing the quality of its workforce. Naturally, China confronts its own short-term challenges, including slower growth in urban investment and industrial output, along with continuing contraction in property investment. When the National Bureau of Statistics cites a complicated international environment as a hindrance to China's recovery, it's clear that this is an understatement. For the time being, the global economy welcomes the burst in GDP originating from China and India. It serves as a reminder that while leaders like Xi and Modi engage in international travel, deliver speeches, hold military drills, or make significant geopolitical gestures, nothing compares to the soft power influence of being a global economic anchor during uncertain times. It's truly invaluable. If what you've learned from this video is also invaluable, be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. See you later.